bringing you in-depth discussion from one of the rad groups of online writers covering the Edmonton Oilers. Are you ready for Oilers Overtime? Join us as we talk news, rumors, trades, player grades, game results, and more. All featured on one of the most glorified teams in the NHL. From the great one to the next one. From the boys on the bus to the decade of darkness. This is Oilers Overtime.
Hey there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another edition of THW Oilers Overtime. My name is Jim Parsons. I appreciate Julian Monjul and the rest of the gang, especially Julian, for filling in for me last week. I was on a little vacation. I visited my father for his birthday. Many of you might know him as the Old Prof if you've ever seen any of the videos for Toronto or read the articles there. And my wife's birthday was in the same little gap, so I took a little week off here, and I appreciate you guys filling in. So Julian Monjul, thank you very much for doing that.
No problem. Good to have you back. Hope the seat's warm for you.
Yeah, and you introduced a pretty cool segment, which I'm kind of excited about today. I'm not going to lie about this. So as well with us, Colton Pankus down in the corner, depending on where you are. It's like the Brady Bunch here. Colton, how are you?
I'm good, Jim. Like Julian said, good to have you back and excited to get going.
I appreciate it. And of course, Brian Swain is with us as always. Brian, how are you?
Doing good, Jim. Man, never a dull moment around this place. So welcome back.
Thank you. No, lots to talk about. I mean, some of it we might overlap a little bit from what I watched you guys do last week, but I think we can still cover enough new stuff. Now, as we record this, by the way, for people who are going to watch this later, we're minutes away from face-off for the game tonight on Tuesday. So lots to talk about in that respect. But when people watch this, anything we might say about the game tonight, we have no idea what the score is going to be. So things we might be positive about or negative about could completely flip on their heads by the time you guys watch this video tomorrow.
We could have ourselves a new coach.
Yeah, that's true, right? I mean, I guess that's a good place to start. And Brian, I'll start with you. Are we one loss away almost every game at this point from Dave Tippett losing his job?
Well, I wrote about that before the weekend. Ryan Rashog, who's a heck of a reporter for TSN, and we pretty much bang on with anything he says. He was pretty adamant that if they didn't get at least a good effort on Saturday night against the Flames, that was going to be it. He was going to be gone on Sunday, and they come out, they played well, they got the results. So now what? Does that mean he's moved? Does that mean he's 2 losses away from losing his job now? Does that mean he's right back on the hot seat if they lose to the Canucks? It's interesting. I mean, if you're that close to getting rid of somebody, or if you're Ken Holland and you're that close to firing him, does one night change all that? Especially because there was the effort was there. They got the 2 points, but there was still a lot of things that you'd want to correct about that game. A lot of things that have plagued them over the last 2 months almost now.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good, entertaining game. I thought the Oilers played pretty well, but what we're noticing so far, and we've probably noticed now if you look closely, is that everything that there's not a game necessarily that goes by that we look at what Dave Tippett has done and said, that was a very well coached game. I can't remember the last time I've ever said that, to be honest with you, right? Colton, are we in a situation now, is his hot seat so hot that, each win can be canceled out by a loss or 2 losses in a row, and this is it for him? Like, Holland seems to be really on the Tippett train, but when is he going to be forced to jump off that train?
Yeah, I think even tonight, I think there's always I think with how hot his seat is, there is a chance. To me, it's if they come out and kind of have a bad effort and lose a game by say 4 or 5 goals, then I think there's no question. But if it goes right down to the end, it's a 1-goal game kind of thing, I think he's still okay, but you can't afford to go on much of a slide again. So if all of a sudden they lose 2 or 3, then I think you have to make a change at this point. But I mean, like you guys said, I thought there were some positives on Saturday, so hopefully they can keep that going tonight.
Julian, as this moves forward, goes farther, we get closer to either being in or not being in the playoffs, is it just that much tighter? Or as we get closer, do you then go, well, we got to stick with Tippett? Right? Because every win and loss, so if they go 500, the Oilers are out of it, right? Yeah. If they win 2, lose 1, Tippett's still in there. He's the coach for the playoffs, but is that good enough to be confident in what he's doing? As you get closer, are you more hesitant to make a change that close to the postseason if you're the GM of this team? Like, how much does the dynamic change as we get closer to maybe being in or not being in the playoff picture?
Well, I don't know if it has a lot to do with it. I think they're just going to kind of ride Tippett out for this season. I don't know why I feel that way. I think that he's got, I don't know why. I think Holland has something in his pocket that he's kind of going to pull a move as soon as they kind of get going here, and they got some reinforcements back. So I think that's going to help the lineup. And I think that if they could start stringing some wins together, then that'll drastically change the whole outlook of everything. So I'm going to stay positive and say that they're going to kind of ride with Tippett. And if it so happens that they get in with him. If not, then he'll probably be fired in the offseason. I don't think it's going to be something that's going to be done now just because of Holland's history. That being said, like a lot of it could change very quickly if they go on another massive slide, like 5+ games. That could be a dramatic thing. And there's a first time for everything. So I'm on the fence, but I think that overall, they're going to try and stick with him just because of, Holland's history with not letting people go mid-season. I don't think that it's necessarily the best thing because you've seen with the Vancouver Canucks, they went on that quick hot streak and then they faded off quickly and kind of came back down to reality after that win streak. So are you looking for quick results just to get the team going? Or are you going to try and implement the system here where this constant goalie or coaches carousel that's in Edmonton is not going to solve anything either?
Ryan, the wheels look like they're turning. What's going on over there?
Yeah, I want to toss something out here. Part of what Ryan Nugent reported last week was that the reason Holland hasn't fired Tippett yet is because he feels that he has not given him the tools to work with. Basically, he's not given him the goaltending that this team needs to succeed. Which is fair. So two questions for you guys. Do they wait until they get a goaltender? Is Tippett safe until then? Or if they are to remove Tippett and replace him with, say, Glenn Gullison or whoever, does it matter if they don't have the goaltender?
I don't think it matters. Like, to me, that's the whole missing link here and that's why I think that there's going to be a move made to acquire a goaltender to fix that, so-called fix it or attempt to fix that issue. Because after that point, then it becomes, okay, I tried to get you something or some sort of help. Now onus is on players and coach, and then you have some sort of justification, I think, to pull the trigger on a firing. But as of right now, I think you're forced to, because it's at your hand. You knew that like it's at Holland's hand where you need to address this situation, and it never got addressed in the offseason.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, it's like you gave him a gun and said go hunting, but there's no bullets in the gun.
Just beat it with a stick.
Yeah, right? Whatever you can.
Well, that's that's kind of what they've been doing, right?
Yeah.
We've been beating a dead horse for the last 2 months. So
we have.
Well, a couple of things I'll comment, and then Julian, I'm going to get you to do me a favor and tell everybody about the newsletter that we do here at the Hockey Writers. But one, Tippett is on the last year of his contract, right? So there's not going to be a firing involved here unless it is in the season, because they just won't extend him, right? So if it doesn't go well, they don't make the playoffs, or they don't do well in the playoffs, don't get out of the first round, whatever, that's it, right? Tippett's not going to be extended. He's not going to get another shot at this. My guess is they'll probably go to Jay Woodcroft out of Bakersfield. Mm-hmm. He seems to be the guy they really like. But my concern and why I asked you this question was because I don't know if you necessarily bring up a guy like Woodcroft. I think if you're doing it midseason, you got to go to Brian's point. You got to go to Gullison, right? Because he knows your system, and like he might change it up a little, slightly, but he's not going to drastically change it so much that everything that you're good at, you've now thrown out the window with a new coach coming in, and you might get that short spurt. But is it too short to really be successful? Is it not long enough? I don't know what you do, right? So as you get closer to the playoffs, it's iffy for me, right? Like, I don't know if you can afford to make a change and have it go wrong, because if it doesn't go well, you're out, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's going to be very interesting to see what they do there. Julian, do me a favor. You did the whole thing last week. I'll let you do it again. Pitch the Morning Skate.
So before we get any further, this week's show is brought to you by the Morning Skate, daily newsletter delivered to your inbox Monday to Friday, jam-packed with the best hockey stuff on the planet. It's a daily dose of the latest NHL news, rumors, history, funnies, quizzes, etc. So it's got everything you need to know. Just a little hockey fun and information brought to you every day of the week from the Hockey Writers, and there'll be a link below in the description for the video here. So make sure you click on it.
Awesome, appreciate that. All right, Colton, I'm moving to you. We talk a little bit about him. Julian brought him up, so I'm going to let you start here. Mikko Koskinen had a fantastic game against Calgary. Like, for all the stuff we talk about with him being inconsistent, that's probably all still true, but you would never have known it. He finally outplayed the other goaltender. He was really, really good against the Flames. Probably the reason, and Draisaitl said he saved us. He's the reason that we won that game. Is it enough? Is one game enough to fool us? And I don't want to say fool us as in like be really sarcastic that he's not any good, because I think he can be good. But is it enough to go, okay, well, maybe we get Koskinen back. Maybe this is the Koskinen that we think we want, that we know he could be. Or is it just one game?
It's one game. I mean, it's been 3 years of this now. I think what Brian said too is like for Tippett, like he needs a goalie, and he got that on Saturday. I think you guys might disagree. I think the Flames were probably the better team in that game. Not that the Oilers played poorly, but they needed a goalie to steal a game. They finally got a good goalie, and they were able to win. So I think it just shows, if this team had gotten a goalie in the offseason, just how much better off they'd be right now. So, I mean, I hope that he can get hot from this and go on a bit of a streak. And he could. He's been streaky throughout his time with the Oilers. But it doesn't change anything for me in the fact that if they want to go not just into the playoffs, but go on a run, they need to go out and grab somebody.
Okay, so his performance against the Flames has not changed your opinion of what they need to do here. Koskinen is not the guy for you. Brian, what about you? I mean, Skinner's back. He's out of COVID protocol. He could have technically played tonight or, last night as people watch this. But they're going with Koskinen again. And I could see why. I mean, he played so well against Calgary that, maybe you want to run with the hot hand. But he's been, as Colin said, inconsistent enough that he's not your guy. So is it a mistake to go with Koskinen again here? Or should they have gone with Skinner? What do you think?
I think he earned tonight's start based on how fantastic he played. As you guys alluded to there, he did steal the game from them, you could argue, on Saturday. So I think he's earned this start. I don't have any more confidence in him going out and having a great game than I might have had on any other given night. Like Colton said, I mean, this is who he is. You could take you could take a snapshot. If you look at his game logs over his career, take a snapshot of like any 2 or 3 games, and you could see a guy that looks like, a Vezina Trophy winner, and you could see a guy who looks like he should be in the ECHL. So that's who he is, and who knows who he gets tonight. Who knows? He could be gone after the second period. Skinner might play. By the time people are watching this. He might have made an appearance. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess that's the deal with him, right? Like he can have a really good game and then he can have a terrible period, and you're like,
that said, I think he's gonna have a good game tonight. So we'll see. I might have just jinxed it, but
hopefully. Well, everything we seem to say goes the opposite way. So talk crap about him and he'll play fantastic. Like that's probably usually how it goes on our show, right? We talk about something in the negative and the positive happens. We talk about something in the positive and the negative shows up the next time. So it'll be interesting. Does it change anything for you, Julian? Does Koskinen's performance, change your outlook on because we still don't have Smith. We have no idea what's going on with him. Stuart Skinner's last performance wasn't great, so we don't really know. We think we know he's better than that game, but we don't know because he hasn't played enough to really prove it. Are you still kind of like, yeah, this isn't enough? Koskinen's not the guy.
Well, I don't think he's the guy still, but I think that him starting and still getting the bulk of the starts is the right move. I think I mentioned it on last podcast where, I don't want to see Skinner, even though he's a confident goaltender and stuff like that. And he's still young. And I don't think that now's the time to start giving him the bulk of the starts if the team isn't playing well in front of him. And I still don't think that they're there yet. Like everything kind of came together against the Flames. Like we saw, the Florida game was a disaster. And then, they bounced back against the Flames. And I kind of mentioned last week too, that, the Flames game might be the one that'll get their juices kind of flowing, ready for game time, in the zone kind of thing. And it did, which was good, but they got the contributions from, their big guys. McDavid, Draisaitl both had good games. They finally were able to get points on the board. And then, their power play started clicking again. They got 2 on the power play. So it's much of the same things where we're seeing them relying on the power play and their stars carrying them. And they so happen to get goaltending, which made, kind of put all the pieces together for them. So I'm still wary about where they are, and I still think that the goaltending needs to be addressed, but I think they have the right move in playing Koskinen. And if you're not going to reward a goaltender for playing good, how is he supposed to get any sort of confidence?
Yeah, I mean, they certainly Koskinen needs to be lifted up. Like after the game against Calgary, he played so well. He absolutely deserved all of the props that he got, and he's been getting them so infrequently this season. It was nice to see Draisaitl, other guys really come to bat for him and just come right out and say, like, whatever you guys say about this guy, we really like him. Like we want to play for him. We like playing in front of him. All the stuff you guys talk about, that doesn't really matter to us. Yeah, it's probably in the back of their minds. Can we have the confidence in this guy? But they They clearly like him. They want to play for him. They're not playing differently because of it. At least they say they aren't. It's just good to have that positive feedback, right? He absolutely needed it. Cole, and I'll ask you this. You guys talked about it a little bit last week, talking about some of the free agent signings that you might go after, the Varlamovs of the world and things like that. You're the one that kind of was like, yeah, he's not my guy, especially this season. How much did you guys focus last week? You have to help me out because it wasn't with you. How much did you focus on realistic targets, like goalies that you could absolutely acquire if you're Ken Holland? So there's a difference, right? We've heard about the Marc-Andre Fleury's. It's not happening. The money, his control over the trade, probably not likely, right? There's guys like Jeremy Swayman or Linus Ullmark out of Boston, but they're in the playoff hunt. Will they really want to move anybody? Same thing with Washington. Those guys are still in it. Do they really want to move anybody? Alexander Georgiev, they need that backup in New York. So who's the realistic option that you would pick if you're trying to replace Koskinen and you've decided, if you're Ken Holland, it needs to be done as quickly as possible?
So I still like Varlamov just for the fact that Holland did say he didn't want a rental. He still got another year. I think the $5 million price tag is quite reasonable for a guy of his caliber. It's just making it work money-wise. And then the other option, I guess, there hasn't been much talk. I don't think they're overly interested in moving him, but with getting Rask back, and then they have Swayman, like you said, is Linus Ullmark, who I think is at $5 million too, who played for a really bad team in Buffalo the last few years and put up pretty good numbers. So I think there are a few guys out there. It just depends. Like, I think Varlamov's the better one to pick up just because he only has the one extra year. And then after that, who knows, like Skinner could be ready to go. So, and Ullmark's still got, I think, 4 more. But I think one of those two guys are probably better than, say, the Anton Khudobins or the Jonas Korpisalos, who I don't really see as much of an upgrade.
No, did you say Varlamov? Did you say he's at 5? Is that what his cap hit is?
$5 million.
Yeah.
So how do they do it? Like, what do they do there? Because the money's an issue, right? They work in an LTIR. They might have some of that, but not much. So what do you move?
Well, that's the thing, right? So I'm thinking, if just because of the fact Koskinen just has 1 year left on his deal and the fact that the Islanders aren't, at least at this point, it looks like they're well outside the playoff picture. I do wonder if you give up a good enough prospect pick, if you could somehow get them to take on that contract. I mean, for their perspective, it doesn't really hurt them, and they would need a goalie for the remainder of the season anyway. So then it just comes down to how big of a prospect are you willing to part ways with for a guy like, because if you give up, say, one of your top prospects and miss the playoffs, it's a disaster. So I can see why Holland's definitely hesitant to do it. But again, I've alluded to it on here before. I just think with McDavid and Draisaitl's time slowly ticking away on their deals, I think something's got to be done sooner or later, and you might have to part ways with one of those big prospects.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. See, the concern for me is like the 1 year he's got left, right? Because it's the only guarantee you have. He's got one more season after this, and he's expensive right now, so it hurts your salary cap in this situation unless you can move Koskinen, like you said. But then you're gonna have to give a sweetener to do it. It's possible, certainly, for sure, it's doable, but I'm not sure what you give up. And in some situations, if you get the right guy, anybody who's not named Dylan Holloway, I guess you talk about. But I don't know if the Varlamov's that guy. Brian, what about you? Is there a guy that you are kind of like, you know what? Yeah, here's the pipe dream of the guy that I want. Here's the realistic guy that I think we could get.
Yeah, there is nobody realistic to me. I think anybody that you can realistically get is not any more of a reliable upgrade than what you have right now. Like any of these guys, you could plop them in a line alongside Skinner and Koskinen, and if he's healthy, Smith. And they may or may not give you a good game tonight. I mean, if you're going to make a move for a goal, you need to get like a slam dunk home run guy that you know can carry the load. And none of those guys that realistically could be acquired fit that description to me. And, you know, we talked about making all these fantasy trades and who could do this and that. Colton just hit on it. Like, you have to think from the other team's perspective. Why are they going to make this move? And I just don't see it out there. I really don't. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't, when you take the other team's perspectives into it, I can't find a really realistic one. Marc-Andre Fleury would be the pipe dream.
Yeah. I mean, it's all about the sweetener, right? Like, you got to give them something to make it worth doing you a favor. And then the cost of the sweetener becomes rough. And Ken Holland has seemed to say, he's with you. There's nobody out there. There's nobody that he sees on the market that he is happy enough to give up first, a really high-end prospect, He doesn't want to, like, from what I'm understanding with Elliot Friedman reported, because the Oilers got to remember have the conditional pick with the Duncan Keith trade. So the second and the third is kind of tied up. They don't know what to do with it yet. So it's a fourth.
Could they not
worse.
trade that pick with the understanding, or the acquiring team has the understanding that it could be?
Oh, sure, you could.
Yeah,
you could, but do you want to? What happens if it turns out to go from a third to a second? Like, I don't know. Does it change who you're targeting if you think and know it's a second versus a third, right? Like, I don't know. It might, right? Like, so if you're looking at fourth or better and fourth or worse, I suppose, in terms of draft picks that you're giving up, who are you getting? And like you said, Martin Jones, maybe, it's those guys, the Khudobins of the like guys you probably don't want. Like, that's just the reality of it. Julian, is there one out there for you that you're like, yeah, here's a guy that they probably should consider?
Well, my thing is they have to decide what they're doing. Like, to me, the decision needs to be made now, not at the deadline. Like, you need to make a move now if you're going to do it, or else waiting till the deadline is not going to do them any good to get a goalie. So it's either you do it now when there's time to make up ground and there's still time to make the playoffs, and maybe, you form some sort of tandem, even if you're getting a guy that's a Khudobin or, some sort of filler. At the end of the day, whoever you're going to bring in is going to be a stopgap until you can find a long-term solution, because those goaltenders that you're going to get as a long-term solution aren't going to be available on the market right now. And they're not going to be under contract for long-term. So you're going to be looking at a rental regardless. And if that rental can work well enough with Koskinen, not knowing what Mike Smith's situation is going to be. So for me, I would be looking at Halak, or even guys like we mentioned, Martin Jones. I think, some sort of tandem that, he's been a starter before, and maybe a change of scenery would help him. But those deals you won't have to give up too much to get those guys, which is what is the good thing about those, because that's what Holland's not looking to move anything major, which might work in his favor, because those teams like the Philadelphia's and other teams like that are not going to be looking for too much, because they're going to lose that goaltender anyway.
Yeah, so sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, it's just really interesting to look at all the smaller little details of all these goaltenders we're talking about, right? Like, Yaroslav Halak has total control over where he goes. He got the shortest, smallest little contract, but a no move clause. So he has the ability to say, I'm not going anywhere, right?
Yeah,
like, he can do that, right?
That's true. But I think whether it's Halak or somebody else, I think there's a move to be made there, but it has to be decided now, because waiting is not going to do the team any good. And to me, like, that's the biggest flaw. So you need to know where your team's at. And if the other guy you could maybe look at is Binnington, if you're looking to give up something significant, because Husso looks like he's been taking over the net there. He's on quite a roll, and Binnington struggled. And if you're looking for a long-term solution, because even next year's free agency for goaltenders isn't that good. So
where's Jack Campbell, but do you have the money for that?
Where's this goalie coming from? It's not going to happen next year. You have one. Is Skinner good enough to take on a full role? Like, you don't know that right now. And the only way to get it is through trade. And you're going to have to give up a pretty good asset in order to get a starting caliber goalie that you're going to be able to trust for the next couple of years.
Who's itching more? I see Brian and Colton squirming down there. Who's itching more? Who wants to go first?
I was just laughing because I seen Brian. You go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, Brian.
No, I mean, I'm just laughing because I think Skinner can be the guy. I don't need to restate that for the umpteenth time on this.
I think he can. I think he can be that guy, but it's just like you can't play with the unknowns. And if you're getting a smaller guy, like if you're getting a Khudobin and you're bringing him in, maybe even if they retain some salary, that becomes a contract that you can pay a backup goaltender to do that next year.
You see Khudobin being? We're talking about this year or next year?
Both.
Well, you have
Khudobin,
to
have to do both.
Year. That's the same. That's what I'm saying is, you have to take that into consideration, because now you're planning for the future. So you have to think Cassian's probably going to be moved out at the end of the season, whether they make playoffs or not, because that's a contract that they're going to have to probably lose in order to make room for some other pieces to come in, whether that's a goalie or whatever. So if you're looking at that and you get Dallas to retain some salary on that deal, that becomes a backup goaltender on a cost-friendly deal that you can trust and is reliable and could be a starter, kind of like Koskinen, but he's making a fraction of what Koskinen was. So that's saving you money in the long run, as long as you can deal with that this year, right? And it's a chance that you're taking that he can get hot enough to take you to the playoffs and at least win a round, if not further.
That's a great point.
Yeah, it's tough. Like a guy like Khudobin, the whole reason they don't want to do that is because he's got that other year, right? And he can hit magic, lightning in a bottle. Like we saw it when he made that run in 2019. Like he was unreal, right? But can he do it again? That's a real question.
Yeah, the bottom line for me is that decision needs to be made soon.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I guess my point was like we look at all the different possibilities and they start to weed themselves out pretty quick, right? Like there's just not a lot there that you can actually realistically take advantage to make salary. Colton, I'm going to start with you on this one. Tyson Barrie is a guy who has a contract, doesn't have any trade protection in it, got recently signed for, I think it was 3 years, decent money, 4.5. Is he expendable now? Is he a guy you can move? I mean, we watched what Evan Bouchard did against Calgary. 2 power play goals, took that spot. Can you move Tyson Barrie?
Yeah, I mean, I was a big Barrie defender last year, just with all the analytics crowd getting on him, and I thought it was a really good signing for him and Edmonton. Obviously, it paid off for him. He was able to get the 3-year deal, like you said. But I liked the deal at the time, and I think each passing day, it's becoming more and more clear that $4.5 million probably should have went elsewhere. Just Evan Bouchard has really stepped up and proven that he can do that Barrie role. I mean, he proved it against the Flames there, and Barrie was out. He had 2 power play goals. I just think that $4.5 million at this point, and like I said, I liked it at the time, but I think it's just becoming more and more evident that money could have went elsewhere, whether it's maybe a goaltender, a third line center, just a better defenseman on that right-hand side. I think he is expendable, and I don't think he'll be back next season.
Brian, do you think he's a guy that you can move? I wrote an article about, and it was just like one of those theoretical situations. I don't think it's going to realistically happen, but that you could maybe put a package together where you're moving Barrie to Arizona for Chychrun. Now, the Oilers aren't, from what we understand, even in on Chychrun, but there is what I'm getting at, potentially teams that like the idea of adding a Tyson Barrie in your top 4. Is that a wrong assumption on my part? Are there no teams that would want him as a player, or are there enough teams that you could trade him if you wanted to?
Yeah, I was going to throw that up to you guys. I don't know if there is a big demand for Tyson Barrie. I think I like Tyson Barrie too. And I think he plays a role. I just don't know if there's a huge market out there for him.
Well, he doesn't play the role on this team that we need him to anymore, right? The idea was that, and I had said it, and a number of other people said it, and I'm actually quite surprised how much Evan Bouchard has played beyond what I thought he could play, and I've always been pumping his tire. But I think you now know that he can do what Tyson Barrie was signed to do. So on this team, right, Tyson Barrie's role is limited because he doesn't really penalty kill for you, even though he can in a pinch. Yeah, he doesn't. He's playing better 5-on-5, but he's more of your power play guy. And if Evan Bouchard gets slotted in that spot, what do you need Tyson Barrie for? So, but there are other teams that don't have an Evan Bouchard, so they could use a guy like Tyson Barrie. So that's what I'm wondering, if you can find that team where you fit Tyson Barrie in your top 4 as a righty running your power play. Is there a market for him? Julian, what do you think?
I think there's a market for him for sure. I think that might be the trade piece that you need to move salary while acquiring a goaltender. And it's going to come down to making a hockey deal for Holland, whether that's in order to get a goaltender or because of the way the cap situation is set up for them. And Barrie might be the expendable piece that they don't need anymore because of the emergence of Bouchard and the way that they can manipulate the salary cap in order to make a deal happen. So I think, you can look at a team like Washington with 2 starters that they would have to make a decision on one of them with Vanacek or Samsonov. And maybe that's something they could be in the market for, a puck moving defenseman, something like that, right? Because they don't have too much there either. I'm not sure. I think that is a piece that they should look to move, because even if that means that you need to find somebody at the deadline to be your 3rd pairing defenseman on the right side, I think you can easily find that.
I think they already have it too. I think they
exactly, right? Yeah, like I wouldn't mind if that was the 3rd pair. That'd be fine. And maybe add another 7th type defenseman nearer at the deadline in order to, compensate for any injuries. That would be more than fine with me, because I'm a fan of both of those guys anyway. And I think that's easier to replace than it is to go find a goalie that's going to help you right now.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I don't imagine, for the same reason I've argued that I don't know that many of these teams with the 2 goalies that we talked about it a couple times here will probably move any of them. I think the COVID stuff, I think the injury situation, I think teams like the depth. They like having that backup option. And Tyson Barrie, if nothing else at this point, is exactly that. If something were to happen to Evan Bouchard, if he were to get sick or whatever, Tyson Barrie is the guy. He goes right back and he slots right in there again. But I do wonder if there's some teams out there that might be interested in him. Okay, I have another question, and I'm starting with Colton. We'll go really quickly through this because I still want to do the +1, -1 segment before we close things off. Just because we don't know if this is going to last. Like I said, as we're recording this, the Oilers game is about to start. The splitting of the lines. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is back. He practiced with the team. He's in the roster. He is not on the same line as Draisaitl, who is not on the same line as McDavid. At least that's what the starting lineup appears to be. So Nugent-Hopkins is centering the third line. Colin, do you like this? Is this good to split those three guys up? Or is this going to be like, we're just testing it out. It's not going to last.
Well, I think it definitely is testing it out. I think we've seen Tippett's impatient with his lines, but I do like it. Just we've been talking about that they need more scoring from guys not named McDavid and Draisaitl. So I think putting a better centerman on the third line helps that. So yeah, I'm a fan of it.
Brian, what about you? I mean, it's given shots, and I saw you talk a lot about like Brendan Perlini last week and things like that. So it's given opportunities to some of these guys in some higher profile spots. Do you like the move? Do you think Nuge needs to be in the top 6?
No, I don't. I'm actually really intrigued to see how this plays out. This could totally backfire, but I'm fascinated to watch how this goes. The one concern I would have with him being on that third line is just his as in the faceoff circle. We know he's not good enough. But let's see what happens. Let's roll this out. And I saw how some people have been speculating that this could be foreshadowing for potential additions that are coming to the team, whether that be Holloway or Evander Kane. This could be setting up for what the new look Oilers could be in just a week or 2 or 3 weeks. So we'll see. I'm really intrigued to see how it goes though.
Yeah, it's a little unfortunate as we record this, we don't have any Evander Kane news because I was hoping we might Monday or Tuesday. They had said there might be a kind of a solution there. So
I'm saving up my takes for next week. So
yeah, you never know. Last word, Julian. Do you like the Nugent-Hopkins on the third line?
I don't mind it right now. I do want to see Nuge up with McDavid again. I said that last week. I want to see him back together with McDavid and see what they can do there. But I understand how Tippett's thinking and having McLeod there because he did play well with McDavid. So, but it wouldn't surprise me to see Nuge and McLeod maybe switch some point through the game against Vancouver.
Cool. All right. I'm going to start the +1, -1 because I didn't get to do it last week. I watched you guys do it. I thought it was pretty cool. And I'm going to hit them both, and I'm going to hit them on the same player. So my +1 is Evan Bouchard walking into that power play, won a big, huge booming, the Bouche bomb, and then the wrist shot, which went in. That's my +1. I think it's a brilliant move. My -1 is that it took an injury for Tippett to make the brilliant move. That sucks. Like that he didn't recognize this prior to, that Evan Bouchard could have been a weapon on that power play and that it's only happening now because Tyson Barrie was knocked out with an injury. That's a real bummer for me. So +1, Evan Bouchard, and the way he's played on the power play, I think this could be the start of something really big. And if he's getting the 5-on-5 points he's getting, plus the power play points that he could be getting, look out for this kid because he is unbelievable in that role. And I think he's a weapon and he's confident and he's willing. And I think it's going to come in buckets if they keep getting power plays. I just don't like the fact that it took an injury for Tippett to make that decision happen. Julian, what about you? You going +1 or -1 this week?
I'm going to go +1 for Koskinen. We've been ragging on him more than enough all season long, and I think he deserves credit when he plays well. And he was the reason they won that game. We touched on it earlier, and he deserves to be rewarded for his strong play, and hopefully he can run with the confidence and keep the good streak rolling.
Cool. And what about you? I think you were a +1 last week, weren't you? Little Perlini action or something because Brian was all over Perlini and then you liked it too or something like that.
I told everybody's one last week.
Yeah, I'll be a +1 again. I'll give it to Draisaitl. I think there were some questions you've seen from some media people and just even fans with this whole dispute with Jim Matheson there. And then I think in the press conference, we talked about it earlier with Koskinen, and he was really pumping him up. And then he put something on his Instagram afterwards too, defending Koskinen. So I think it's pretty evident just from that game alone, just his leadership and the fact that he was able to step up and really put the team on his back at a time that they're really down in the dumps.
Yeah, I had written that I thought Draisaitl put himself in a position where he had to have a really big game coming out right away. It took him one more game than I thought it would take him, but he had a massive game against Calgary, and he needed to because not only did he say the right things, but he showed it on the ice, which is super important. Brian, what about you? +1, -1?
I'm going to take a page out of your book. I like that doing both of the same guy. I'm going to go with Mikko Koskinen here. Give him a +1 for just an amazing performance against Calgary on the weekend. And I thought I couldn't imagine after how difficult things were, how badly things went for him on Thursday night, having to go back out there and regroup and get that start with everything that was swirling around this team. They had no other option. It pretty much had to be him. And he stepped up and delivered. I'm going to give him a -1 because if he hadn't had a horrible game, that might have been the end of it for Tippett, and that might have probably put this whole thing to rest. And now here we are still like not knowing from day to day what's going on. So +1, -1 for Mikko Koskinen, and a honorable mention to Brendan Perlini, who's just an absolute gem.
Yeah, that after hours interview. Jeez,
Yeah, that was good.
How do you not love this guy after that interview, right?
Quickly,
Like,
I'm just looking at the game now, and Nuge actually started on the top line with McDavid and Yamamoto.
so that lasted.
Oh, thanks a lot.
So
This is why we want him on talent.
shows where
That's
everybody's
right.
head's at, just for perspective.
Awesome. Well, when people watch us, we're gonna find out what the score is, and we'll know, and we'll have something. We'll see how
And
many
we'll
times
have
we're
way
right
more
or
to talk about next week.
That's right. Well, you know what? This is a good spot to close it off. Letting everybody know that we totally had the wrong information, that Tippett changed his mind, which Tippett's going to do. So that's just kind of how it goes. But for everybody else here at the Oilers Overtime Show, Julian, Colton, Brian, myself, Jim, just a quick reminder, if you're watching this, check out the YouTube channel because there's a ton of fantastic content from a ton of contributors at the Hockey Writers doing really great stuff. So check out all the videos, the channels, news and rumors, news, all sorts of stuff. Just check it out. Really worth your time. The YouTube channel for the Hockey Writers. For everybody else, thank you for joining us this week, and we'll have more information next week, and we'll go. Hopefully, we'll have a Vander Kane news. Hopefully, we'll have something on the goalie. Hopefully, the Oilers have won a couple games because they're all every other game now.
Yep.
That's what they're looking at, right? Right on, guys. Thanks again. Another edition of Oilers Overtime. We'll talk to you guys next week.